Two packages can look like butter. Only one label tells the story. On the shelf, everything looks creamy, golden, and familiar. But real butter is not defined by the front of the package. It is defined by what the label says about cream, milk fat, ingredients, and what the product actually is. You know, when you picture a bright kitchen with golden butter melting on a warm piece of toast, you expect a very specific experience. But when we actually investigate the dairy aisle, the visual promise of a butter-style package often masks a completely different reality. To truly understand what you're bringing home, we essentially need to take out a magnifying glass and look closely at the ingredient labels.
So, let's dive into part 1, the front package illusion, or marketing versus reality. The contrast here is absolutely striking. The front of the package gives you these glossy images of clean dairy farms, wholesome aesthetics, and comforting words like churned and pure. But those visuals are really just marketing. Think of a butter package kind of like a passport. The front shows the glossy photo and the name, sure. But the back label, where you find the legal designations, milk fat percentages, and exact ingredients, that dictates where the product actually belongs. Next up is part 2, the legal butter threshold. We like to call this the 80% rule. To understand what you are actually buying, we have to look at these strict legal definitions enforced in the dairy aisle. By strict legal definition in the United States, a product must contain a minimum of 80% milk fat to be sold as butter. That is the legal floor. If a product misses that strict legal minimum of fat from milk, it simply cannot legally call itself butter. Depending on the label, it actually must be classified as a spread or a blend. 80%. Now, some brands, like Challenge Butter, for example, hit exactly this 80% minimum standard and just stop right there. And while it totally meets the legal definition, stopping at the bare minimum creates a noticeably rigid texture straight out of the fridge. It also leaves you with a relatively flat flavor profile compared to higher fat options, especially when you use it for baking. That brings us to part 3, decoding spreads and blends, for products that fall below the threshold. So what happens when a product falls short of that 80% mark? Well, it enters a completely different category where water and vegetable oils take over. Looking closely at the labels of popular tubs reveals some pretty surprising data. Imperial sits at 27% fat, Blue Bonnet at 31%, Brummel & Brown at 35%, and Country Crock Original at 38%. These fat percentages mean they don't even qualify as margarine by standard definitions, let alone butter. This reality is undeniable when you look at a lower fat spread like Imperial. At a 27% fat content, the formula is predominantly, wait for it, 70% purified water, followed by vegetable oil. Without enough fat to bind the mixture properly, you are essentially purchasing an emulsion of water and oil. And that may leave a greasy film in your mouth rather than a creamy dairy finish. And sometimes, the exact nature of the product is visually downplayed by the manufacturer. For example, the 38% vegetable oil content on a Country Crock label is printed in green ink against a green background. It literally requires you to actively hunt for the true vegetable oil percentage on the tub. This just goes to show that reading the fine print is absolutely essential. Even when a tub boasts premium additions on the front, like olive oil, avocado oil, or real yogurt, the back label frequently reveals a completely different story. These highlighted premium ingredients are often only a tiny fraction of the formula, sitting way down the ingredient list behind purified water and cheaper bulk oils like soybean, canola, and palm oils. Essentially, the front label is doing work the product formulation simply cannot support. Moving on to part 4, the additive equation. What exactly replaces the fat? When fat and dairy are removed to create light spreads or canola blends, food science has to fill that missing space with something else. The ingredients that actually fill that space in reduced calorie or spreadable alternatives often rely on a long line of additives. We're talking purified water, modified food starch, maltodextrin, mono and diglycerides, and preservatives like sodium benzoate. These ingredients are introduced to mimic the texture, mouthfeel, and shelf stability of real butter, replacing the natural dairy fat. This brings up a truly fascinating mechanism of food labeling. How does a butter-flavored cooking spray legally claim 0 calories on the front of the can? The answer is 700 calories. See, marketing claims can manipulate serving sizes to present a seemingly impossible nutritional profile. Because FDA regulations allow a serving size defined as a fraction of a second spray to round down to 0 calories, consumers may not realize the truth. A full bottle of a product like I Can't Believe It's Not Butter spray
actually holds approximately 700 calories and 80 grams of fat. Let's pivot to part 5. What real butter labels reveal? Moving beyond the minimum. Let's turn our attention away from the blends and examine premium labels. Notice how the ingredient list shrinks while the milk fat percentages actually rise. Stepping just a few points above the legal minimum makes a massive difference here. Brands like Tillamook hit 81%, and Vital Farms pushes up to 83 to 85% milk fat. That extra fat drastically improves the butter's performance. You know, how it melts into toast, how it spreads, and how beautifully it bakes. And 82%? That is a magic number in the culinary world. Brands like Plugra and Kerrygold adhere strictly to the European specification of an 82% minimum milk fat. This is the exact standard that professional kitchens and pastry chefs rely on for exceptional depth, rich flavor, and perfect texture in their dishes. Another term you might spot on a premium label is cultured butter, seen on brands like Vermont Creamery. This indicates a natural fermentation process. Basically, fresh cream is allowed to ferment before churning, which converts the lactose into lactic acid. This builds a naturally complex, savory tang and rich flavor without requiring a single artificial additive. The label can also tell you an incredible amount about sourcing. Just compare a minimum standard butter, which is often from grain-fed cows, resulting in a pale color and rigid texture, to pasture-raised butter. Cows that graze on pasture naturally produce milk rich in beta-carotene. That natural diet results in a deep, golden yellow butter, rather than a pale block, and it requires absolutely no added food coloring. Which brings us to part 6, the 2-ingredient benchmark. This is a simple rule for the dairy aisle. So how do we easily navigate all of this at the grocery store? Well, when you put a heavily marketed vegetable oil tub side by side with a benchmark butter, the difference is undeniable. An oil spread relies on water, soybean oil, palm oil, flavors, and preservatives. But a genuinely excellent butter, it only needs 2 things, cream and salt. It just doesn't need chemical assistance to be delicious. So the crucial takeaway for your next shopping trip is this simple 3-step process. 1. Ignore the front marketing claims and the pastoral artwork entirely. 2. Turn the package around and check the back for the legal words spread or blend. And 3. Look exclusively for cream and salt. By going straight to the back label, you take control of your cart and know exactly what you are paying for. Which leaves us with this final, really fascinating thought. Once you realize how effortlessly a label can disguise an emulsion of water and oil as farm-fresh butter, it forces you to wonder what other staples in your kitchen are telling you a similar story. If the butter aisle relies on this much front-of-package illusion, what exactly might you find when you turn over your bottle of extra virgin olive oil? Remember, the front package is marketing, the back label is reality. Make sure you read the story it's telling you.